Paul McKelvey. I grew up down on the Newport Peninsula, so great place to grow up as a kid. Learned to surf as my dad taught me how to do that. So Zach, you and I will have to get out there someday. I share surfing with Simon and with Raphael, so that was great. Raphael got me back into it after kind of a couple 3-year hiatus. So anyway, growing up down on the peninsula, went to the local schools there. Newport L on the beach, that was awesome. We used to have impromptu little field trips when the gray whales would go by, and the teachers would all bring us out to go watch. Santa Claus would come in the police helicopter and land on the pavement, and it was a cop dressed up as Santa Claus. So have a lot of great memories. Mom's still down in the area. I went to high school, Newport Harbor High, and then went off to Orange Coast College. Always knew I wanted to go to USC. That was kind of a distant, okay, how am I going to get there? And I actually spent 3 years at OCC because a friend of mine signed up for the GED. He said, hey, come with me. We don't have to go to school anymore. And I ended up passing it. Didn't tell my folks. I ended up passing it. He didn't. And so I thought, all right, I'm going to go off to OCC early. So I signed up before I ever even told my parents. I had registered at OCC. And then I break it to them, and they're like, oh gosh, he's gone. Because I, grew up down on the beach, loved to surf. Mom says I used to skip some classes. I don't remember that so much. It's like when the surf was good, right? So I got out of OCC with an AA degree in business, or did all the core courses there, and then transferred over to USC and finished out there. So that was a great experience. And then that was in 83 I got out. So I started college in 78, finished in 83, and was one of the few that actually had a job offer right out of school before I got out. And that was with General Dynamics. And I had a choice of going into either procurement or estimating. And I'd always been in construction as a kid. I thought estimating, perfect. So I had a chance to spend 2 years down there as what they called a program estimator. And it was really kind of playing little general contractor. I would take all of the little pieces of the specialty departments, organize it, and submit it. Well, as a starting estimator, I worked on the cruise missile program, and I would be in charge of pricing little changes that the Air Force, the Navy would always come up with. So, you've heard about those $3,000 toilet seats. I watched some things come through, and I understood why things got so expensive, because there was so much paperwork that tracked everything. And so that's why things got really expensive. So it was a great experience. I had a chance to go back to Washington, D.C. twice to help support negotiations, so that was cool. And then, so that was, there it is right there. So, and that was fascinating. That was back when Reagan was president, and they were, we were doing the Cold War thing, and one of the things that he got big into was the trucks that would launch. He had those hiding out in the forest. And Johnny, you were probably back there in Germany, right? I think maybe at kind of the same time. So anyway, so did that for 2 years, and then got a call from Dad, who wanted me to come do so I got into structural reinforcing. And he was actually the one that got me into construction. Overpaid me, $10 an hour as a kid, which was a lot of money back then. I had no idea what I was doing, other than he said, okay, you figure it out, you go fix it. And he would let me buy the tools and buy the material, and he'd pay me by the hour. So pretty much all self-taught. But by the time I had come through school, I had done quite a bit of work. So my grandfather, years and years ago, had actually purchased the Bradbury building back when it was in hard times. And so he had, with the city of Los Angeles, required any building prior to 1933 to get reinforced for earthquake safety. And so Dad was running it at the time. He hired me to come in, and again, same thing, put the crew together, paid me time and material, and I went in and worked with some great engineers, and that gave me my love for structural. I understood what they were trying to do, and so then with starting that, I was able to go out and reinforce churches and apartment buildings, and as a kid in my mid-20s, was running quite a few crews, and churned anyway. So did that for quite a while, ended up getting married, moving to Redlands, and I took what I learned on the commercial end and miniaturized it to bring it in under homes that were on old brick and old stone foundations. And what would happen is during an earthquake, the ground would take off and start to move, and the house wouldn't go with it. And that's when you hear about a house falling off its foundation. And so I worked with the engineers one in particular that I did a lot of seismic work with, and we came up with the system that we called an underfloor bracing system. There was a series of what we would do is he could calculate the weight of the house, I would measure everything, and based on the weight of the structure, then we could go in and use current code equivalents and develop a lateral bracing system underneath that was big. We'd crawl under the houses, it was dirty work, but I did over 150 of them in Redlands, Riverside, and some in Los Angeles, where we would we'd crawl underneath, we'd dig deep footings, and then hang sonotubes up underneath and put drag struts going in both directions. And based on the weight of the house, we would engage the underside of the floor, so if the earth took off, it would push and pull the house right with it. So what's in between, that soft brick, that old river rock, and often it was a very architectural feature of the structure. So instead of lifting, which we did a couple of times, lifting the house up off the ground, taking out the old foundation, pouring new concrete, some of these old homes had beautiful stone on the outside or brick, and it was an architectural feature. So we could save that. And then we'd go in and repoint and tighten up all the mortar. And I think the biggest one that we did was the one in the corner there called Kimberly Crest. And back in the day, this was Kimberly Clark, the paper manufacturer. The people that founded that, they would come from the Minnesota area, people from back east. Instead of going to Palm Springs, they would go to Redlands because it wasn't as hot. And so they built a mansion out there, and we did that one there. Then from there, I got into doing residential, had a chance to move back down to Newport, and then it was strictly all just residential. So we started out with, small remodels like that. These two pictures right there, that's actually Jeff Hart's house. Jeff and his brother Don purchased a home in San Clemente. Beautiful view. We gutted it and upgraded his place. So these are older photos. I've certainly have gone on to do more. But just a lot of just residential remodel. Did a couple of foundations after that, but not many. So the focus became general contracting. So a little personal note, kids are getting a little older. You socialize with friends of the parents of the kids' friends so we ended up moving to New Zealand with another family. We hit on that idea before the kids get, into high school, so to speak. And one thing led to another. We got serious about it. Again, didn't tell the folks until we knew we were going to do this. So I ended up buying a house on the North Shore of Auckland, and ocean view. We looked out, $575,000 in US, and we were able to get a Kiwi loan in the New Zealand dollar for so much less than what the Kiwis were paying, because we were using American dollars, and they wanted the American dollars to do this. So we leased out our house and we moved down to New Zealand for just over a year. And then we made our way back. Again, my folks thought, okay, they're gone. We loved it, but we knew instinctively that we weren't going to stay. We just wanted to do this OE experience, overseas experience. And so then our friends, actually, they bought a house also, but they stayed longer. They stayed for another 6 months beyond us. So that was cool. And we ended up selling the house, and it paid for the whole trip. So it worked out really well. I remodeled. That was what I did when I was down there. And it was pretty cool. It was in a little cove, and right next to us, that little inlet right there, that little peninsula right there, used to be what they call a Maori paw. It was a fortified fort where the local indigenous Maoris had created, and you could still see the dugouts. You could still see evidence of it. And right below us it was all overgrown, but it was a little a pillbox, a machine gun nest that the Kiwis were terrified that the Japanese were going to come in, and so they had all these leftover. So there's still a lot of history out there. So New Zealand has a place in my heart. It's just, I think about it all the time, and we're actually planning a trip back over Christmas. So my uncle lives down there, so that's what kind of put it on our radar. So moving forward, there was a home that we did in Newport. Who are the contractors on that? Anyway, this was for kind of a level of what we do. Okay, this is one that a lot of you guys worked on. This was the house that I ended up speccing with my wife Barbara, scraped it and built a new home. And so this was down in Laguna Beach, and so that was a fun build. And so there it is. I have finally updated my website, so McKelveyConstruction.net. There is a McKelveyConstruction.com, and he's a small guy that is in Atlanta, Georgia somewhere. So I'd never got .com. I had to go to .net. So anyway, that was it.
Paul, I think that's so interesting that it sounds like you really cut your teeth on estimating with the aerospace or defense company. Do you feel like you really carried away some base knowledge that helped you for the rest of your career, or just kind of got you interested in it?
Well, I think what it did was going through, school. I learned how to organize things. I didn't walk away. My job was organizing the bits and pieces that came in from the different departments. And similar this to what I do now, is you guys as subs will give me quotes and I'll organize those. So the answer is yes. I think it was a great experience for me to actually put on a coat and tie every day, right? I don't do that anymore. I don't know that I miss it, but yes, it did. It gave me confidence to stand up in front of a room and be able to pitch things, because before we'd finally submit, I had to go pitch, whatever little piece I was working on. And so I never did the production estimating. I didn't stay long enough to get that experience or be brought up to that level. But the Navy, the Air Force, they always had something that they wanted to change, upgrade. Some stuff would come back from the field, or they needed to. I mean, it was fascinating. So, anybody else?
Just
John?
a quick comment. It's funny how you stay in these groups and you learn. Like, I've known you for, I think 6 years
Yeah,
now.
long time.
My wife lived in New Zealand.
Did she
honeymooned in New
really?
Zealand, and we actually talked about moving there when Evan gets in middle school. So
Oh my gosh, we'll have a coffee break. I love talking about it. Where did you go? What?
We went, the first time we went to, we honeymooned in Queenstown. And
Yes.
Rented a car and drove up to the South Island. The second time we went, we did a farm stay in the South Island. And
Wow.
Auckland and stayed.
Wow. Yeah, Queenstown, the adrenaline capital of the world.
Yeah.
They just do some nutty things. There's more florists in the Yellow Pages there than there are lawyers. And because they will do some crazy things down there, and it's safe, but
Bungee jumping
did bungee jumping? I actually did it where that guy Paul, I forget his last name. Did you actually bungee jump? What did you do? Did you do any of the
shot over boat?
Yes, the shot over jet.
Some whitewater rafting.
Right.
Stayed
Yeah.
at a really cool bed and breakfast.
Yeah, it's beautiful down there. The shot over jet. So that's, what are they, 600 horsepower jet boats
Yeah.
that fly up and down this shot over river. it's this gorge and the river's moving fast, and these boats are so powerful they just fly, and they literally, you see red, they're all red, right? Did you notice the red paint on some of the canyon walls?
No, I had my eyes closed.
So they will take off and go into such shallow water. You're like, how are they doing this? And they're going so fast that they're literally, their draft is probably 6 inches. And you're harnessed in, you've got the suit, the vest on, the helmet on, and it's something. So, yeah.
I'll tell one other quick story. So we're honeymooning, so I look at one of these pamphlets, and we're gonna rent a plane and ride in this plane like over Milford Sound, do the whole deal.
Right.
And so we get to this little airport, and I don't know, checking in, whatever, this little guy walks out. He couldn't have been 15. He looked like Opie Taylor, for those of you who know.
And he's the pilot.
And he was the pilot.
Yeah.
And we're like, oh my gosh. And we ended up, there's another person that went with us that was on some kind of sheep tour, and we landed in a cow pasture, like field type deal, like you said, old school days. And man, it was crazy, like.
So you flew in and around the
flying this plane.
15, right? And so you dropped down into the Sound and toured that and came back up again?
Yeah, we got on a boat and did,
Oh, so you did the Sound, yeah. Yeah, it's
beautiful.
beautiful. Just stunning.
Highly recommend it.
Yeah,
And Christmas
stunning.
time is the best time to go to.
Right. Well, it's their summer down there. So right now they're coming into their winter. But yeah, New Zealand's, so yes, we enrolled the kids in school, and everybody wears a uniform in all of the schools. So it really was an equalizer, because, growing up in Newport and having our kids go there, some kids come dressed to the nines because the parents have money, and it becomes a thing. That is completely eliminated down there. And it's interesting, they speak English, but they use different terms. So sometimes you're carrying on a conversation and you get lost because you're not understanding and my son was little, and he was having trouble tracking, and so the teacher calls us up and says, does he have some issues? And it turned out that he just didn't really even though he was speaking English, he just was quiet and didn't really understand some of the terms they were using. So that was interesting. But yeah, they did that. It was cool. So, all right.
2 questions.
I was gonna say I haven't been to New Zealand yet, but that's because I'm saving it for my honeymoon someday. Because I'm very obsessed with New Zealand. I think it's a great place. It helps that I love Lord of the Rings because it's all
yes,
there.
it's all there.
That definitely helps.
Yeah.
But oh my gosh, yeah.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
And I didn't touch on BTN, and when I told Barbara, my wife, that I was going to speak today, she was like, oh, the story is interesting. So do I have more time? Am I going to get the bell? So 2008, things crash. I had worked through 2009, but I was getting a lot of my subs calling up, do you have work? Do you have work? And I could tell everything was really slowing down. And at the time, I was doing a project next door to a gal that said, hey, would you be interested in joining this group? We don't have our general contractor just left. And it was BNI. And I said, sure. So I go and I'm watching how this thing works, and I'm thinking, wow, how perfect because it's all word of mouth. It's building relationships. So, and BNI has been around for 30 plus years, right? It's a big deal. They really focused on making it work. And so my sister was a member at the Newport Beach Tennis Club, and she helped me, so I called up, anyway, we got the idea of let's start just a trades group. And by 2010, it took a few months to get it organized, but called up all the subs. And our very first meeting, we had about 35 people in the room. And I watched, electricians connect with roofers, and immediately referrals were being exchanged. And so that's how it started in May of 2010. And so it's grown from there. It's expanded, and then it's contracted, and now we're down to just a core quality group. And Peter, you joined us shortly thereafter.
Yeah, I was slow at that time too, just like you. And I went down, when you're slow, you canvass areas. And I went down to the Newport Peninsula because that's where I want to work, and saw this job being built, and I asked the guy, did they let the cabinets out here yet? And he goes, no, but here's the contractor's card. Give him a call. It was Paul McKelvey Construction. So I called, and at that time it was your girlfriend, not your wife. Barbara answers the phone. She goes, I'm sorry, we let the cabinets out on that job, but tomorrow morning he's starting this networking event at Newport Beach Tennis Club. If you be there at 7 o'clock tomorrow morning. And I thought, oh, great.
Yeah, right. I just wanted a job. I know you're selling me on networking.
So, okay. So I go, and like you said, there were 35 people in the room. There was electricity in the air. Everyone was so excited about what they were doing, and they wanted to share it. And I thought, wow, this is okay. We're not just sitting around like a bunch of businessmen talking about something, but we had designers and some realtors,
Beth Phillips,
a lot of electricians and plumbers and drywallers and painters and roofers, people who put windows in. And at the same time, you had started this, our procedure. Everyone got to introduce themselves. And that was something new for me. I never sat in a group and introduced myself with a bunch of construction guys. And everyone was excited about telling everyone what they did. And then in the middle of the meeting, we had one member, give a presentation.
Yeah.
And I forgot the guy's name, but he did windows. And he did his presentation, and his a slide presentation. And I thought, this looks familiar. And I'm looking at this house that this guy's doing. And I stopped him and I asked him, I said, is this Ed Fishion's house in Huntington Harbor? He goes, yeah. Then he points at me and goes, I thought you looked familiar. You worked on that house too.
Yeah.
So it was a connection right away. And I told him, back up 2 slides, that's my kitchen.
Yeah. Yes.
And I felt welcomed.
Yeah.
And like I said, the energy in the room was infectious. I just fed on it, and it made me feel like a part of a group. And shortly after that, you left and went to Laguna to start a new chapter.
And then you stepped up and you were running,
another
right?
chapter, and we had 5 or 6 chapters going all over.
Yeah, it was a lot,
and it's fun,
yeah.
and it's still fun. I've been real busy, haven't been here in person, but I just feel like such a part of this organization, and I love the relationships that everybody here has with everybody else.
Yeah.
It's wonderful. So thanks for starting it.
Oh, my pleasure. And watching BNI, how they did it, it was organized. I didn't come up with any special idea. I just followed what they did. But my sister helped me get it going. She really stepped up and helped me organize it. And yeah, it just kind of, it took off. So very proud of the group, very thankful for all the relationships. And it's really, I can't afford to, make this my primary. You guys have all watched. So it has grown organically, and with everybody else's help, just stepping in to keep it going. So it's been cool. So anyway, thank you.
Good job.